Kia ora, my name's Bojana and I'm a PhD candidate in art history here at UC, where I study the history of replication and copying in the 19th century. So the spread of objects I've got in front of me today really help us to understand how images circulated in the 19th century and specifically how they were used in places like this, in lecture halls across many different universities. So this lantern slide here is particularly interesting to think about in terms of the movement of images. As you can see, there's a lot of cracking, and being glass, they were particularly fragile to things like breaking. There were so many of them that they would often be stacked kind of one in front of the other in little cabinets where lecturers could then sift through and pick whatever lantern slide they needed for the particular lecture that they were going to deliver. But I thought this one was quite interesting because it tells us something about the journeys that they took. Perhaps even a clumsy lecturer fumbled it and dropped it on the floor. That would have made for quite an interesting class, I think. So this fully formed lantern slide would have been commercially produced by the British Museum, and you can see the image there is of a sculpture in their museum in one of their collections. We can tell it's commercially produced because of the little sticker up in the corner, also the little number in the other corner, which probably tells us something about the series that it would have been a part of. And then also along the top, in very, very tiny font, you can see the label of what the image represents. The interesting thing with this one is if we flip it over, there's another sticker saying SOA. So this indicates that this particular lantern slide would have actually been used for teaching as part of the School of Arts curriculum. This is a commercially produced hand-coloured slide, and I think it's a really nice way of seeing how impactful these kinds of images would have been. You can see that even with this one, there's a slight gradient happening from the top where it's a pure blue all the way down, goes through to pink and down to yellow to give this sort of sunset effect. And someone's even gone through the trouble to hand paint the wee bushes on the ground a colour green. Although this object might look a bit unfamiliar, it's an old lantern slide projector, which we may think of as a sort of precursor to modern day projectors. The way in which it would have worked is you would have gotten one of these slides, which could then be inserted and pushed back into the lantern projector, where a light would shine through, thereby projecting this image on a much larger scale so that everyone in the class could see. With this particular model, one of the benefits was that you could actually have two lantern slides in at one time. So you would put one in, close it, and another gap would open so that you could put the other one in while you were still projecting an image. This made the actual transition and the flow of the lecture very smooth. One of the really interesting things for me as a researcher about these objects is the fact that they can tell us a lot about replication and the flows of materials and images in the 19th century. How things were transported, how they were made, and what kind of objects were being represented. That's really one of the things that I'm really interested in through my research, and one of the reasons why these particular objects are really exciting to dive into.